Hi, B-Wing. I'm Mrs. Stutzner. Tonight we're going to be reading chapters 5 and 6 of our Hank Zipzer Niagara Falls, or Does It? Okay, chapter 5. 3, 2, 1, bring the bell. After an endless afternoon of alphabetizing practice, the first day of 4th grade was finally over. Frankie and I looked at each other. We were free men. Frankie, Ashley, and I ran downstairs and practically flew out the front door of the school building. Papa Pete was waiting outside to walk us home. Papa Pete is my mother's father. He also happens to be one of the greatest human beings on the face of the earth. He was helping Mr. Baker, the crossing guards, take the little kids across the street. "There he is," said Frankie, waving to Papa Pete. "Get your cheeks ready." When Papa Pete sees you, he gives you a big pinch and says, "I love this cheek and everything that's attached to it." I know this sounds like it's annoying, but it actually makes you feel really good. Papa Pete gave us each a pinch and a hug. "I hardly recognized you kids," he said. "You look so much older now that you're in the 4th grade." We had hoped this was the year we'd be allowed to walk home from school by ourselves. After all, Frankie, Ashley, and I live in the same apartment building, so we could all walk together, safety in numbers. We all told our parents, but we were all turned down flat. New York City is not a place for kids to be wandering around alone, our parents said. Okay, we could live with that because having Papa Pete walk you home is actually pretty fun. He walks 10 feet behind us to make it look like we're walking alone. Papa Pete is so big that there's no way we could lose him in a crowd, even if we tried. It's not that he's tall, he's just large, the way a grizzly bear is large. My grandma Jenny used to call him her big, cuddly grizzly bear. Maybe that was because he also had a ton of curly black hair on his arms and a huge mustache he calls his handlebars. After he eats something messy, he'll always say, "Tell me, Hank, do I have anything hanging off the old handlebars?" I always tell him if he does, because he doesn't want to be embarrassed. We headed up Amsterdam Avenue. We walked a couple blocks and passed Harvey's, our favorite pizza shop. It's no wider than a hallway, but they have the greatest cherry cokes and pizza there. You can smell it blocks away. "I say we stop in for a slice," Frankie said. Papa Pete shook his head. "Hold on, partner. We got bigger bread to butter." When Papa Pete says a thing like that, you don't argue. He's always got something great waiting for you. We passed the man on the corner selling sunglasses. "Hey, gentleman and lady," he said to us, "I got a special pair just for your face." Ashley stopped to look at a pair of rhinestone-covered glasses, but Frankie and I pulled her away. You can't let Ashley get started on rhinestones or you'll be there all day. She's a complete rhinestone nut. Messengers on bikes whizzed by us. Moms coming back from the park pushed their babies in strollers. I love to see the babies' feet hanging out of the strollers. It always amazes me that inside their little bitty feet are big feet waiting to pop out and play basketball. A couple blocks up, we passed my mom's deli, the one Papa Pete started. It's called the Crunchy Pickle. They serve sandwiches so high they have to be held together with a toothpick. I waved at Carlos, who works at the counter. I could see him shouting something, and even though I couldn't hear him, I knew he was saying, "Hey, little man." "Hey, big man," I called back. When we got to our apartment building, Frankie and Ashley started to go inside. Papa Pete steered them back onto the sidewalk. "You haven't forgotten, have you?" he said. "We have some business to conduct. I was thinking maybe you could come to my office." Papa Pete's office is McKelty's Rollin' Bowl. It's his hangout, his home away from home. Everyone there knows him. He's the best senior bowler on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I have to ask my parents, Ashley said. I took the liberty of phoning the good doctors Wong, said Papa Pete, and they said you don't have to be home until 6. Although Ashley's parents are both doctors, Papa Pete is the only one I know who calls them the good doctors Wong. They don't seem to mind, though. I don't think my mom will let me go, Frankie said. My dad teaches tonight, and she likes me home. Frankie's dad teaches African American Studies at Columbia University, which is 38 blocks uptown. Once his dad let me come to one of his lectures. He talked for almost 2 hours. I don't think I'll ever go to college if you have to sit still and listen to someone talk for 2 hours and take notes at the same time. Fortunately for you, your mother was standing on her head when I called, Papa Pete said to Frankie. So I spoke with your father. When I explained that we were discussing important business, he said okay. That was all we needed to hear. We took off from McKelty's, which is only a couple blocks from our apartment building. It's located on the 2nd floor above the 99-cent store, where I do most of my gift shopping. I bought my mom some earrings there for Mother's Day. She doesn't wear them much, though, because they hurt her earlobes, or her lobes. Lots of people who shop at the 99-cent store don't even realize that there's a bowling alley upstairs. You can hardly see it from the street, but it's got 15 lanes, video games, and a coffee shop, too. When we got to McKelty's, the lanes were full of Papa Pete's friends. They were all wearing their different colored team shirts. They waved to us as we took a seat in one of the red plastic booths in the coffee shop. Fern, Papa Pete called out. 3 root beer floats for my grandkids here. The fact that Frankie's African American and Ashley's parents are from Taiwan doesn't stop Papa Pete from calling them his grandkids. That's another thing I love about him. And another is that he'll always buy you as many root beer floats as you want without ever mentioning that they will ruin your appetite for dinner. Fern, who's been working at McKelty's for like 150 years, brought us our root beer floats. As we were slurping down the last of our ice cream, Papa Pete started talking. Okay, let's get down to business, he said, wiping some whipped cream from his mustache. I believe you've got a little something to show me. I haven't mentioned this before because sometimes I forget things, but Frankie is an outrageous magician. He doesn't just do the tricks you buy in the store either. He makes up his own. Anybody can make a nickel disappear and then pull it out of your ear. But Frankie can make a quarter disappear and then have 5 nickels drop out of his nose. Now that's what I call magic. Papa Pete was thinking about hiring him to be the entertainment at his bowling league's start of the season party. His team is called the Chopped Livers. Everything about Papa Pete has to do with the deli he used to own. Like his 2 parakeets are named Lox and Bagels. I'm surprised he didn't name my mother Pickled Herring. Let's see what you can do, Papa Pete said to Frankie. You mean you're making the kid audition? Fern said. Business is business, answered Papa Pete, winking at Ashley and pinching my cheek, all at the same time. Frankie reached into his backpack, got out 3 red cups, and placed them in a row on the table. What you see before you are 3 ordinary red cups, he began. He took out 2 small and 1 medium royal blue sponge balls that he'd smushed together in the palm of his hand. He asked Ashley to blow on his closed hand 3 times and then opened his palm, and the balls had transformed into 1 big blue sponge ball. He put that under the middle red cup. He moved all the cups around in a flurry and then put them back in a stack. Zangawi, chanted Frankie. It's a word he made up when he went to Zimbabwe with his parents a couple of years ago. Frankie says it has magical powers. He lifted the stack of cups high in the air, and there on the table were the 2 small and 1 medium sponge balls. You're hired, Papa Pete said as he applauded. Do you want the job? Could I have a word with my associates for a moment? I asked Papa Pete, in private. I pulled Frankie and Ashley off to the side. I see a future here for all of us, or for us all, I said. Frankie, you're the head magician, but you're going to need an assistant, which is me. And we'll need a business manager. That's you, Ashley. You'll make us millionaires. I want to be an assistant too, Ashley said. Okay, I said, we'll switch off, but you still have to be the money person because I'm dangerous with numbers. Last week, I went out to buy a slice of pizza, and they were out of dollar bills, so the guy gave me change all in coins. I just had to trust that he gave me the right change because there was no way I could add it all up in my head. I would have needed a pad of paper, a pencil, and my sister Emily, who is a human calculator, to figure it out. Okay, said Ashley, since I'm the business person, let me do the talking. Go for it, Ashwina, said Frankie, slapping her a high five. We went back over to Papa Pete. In the last few minutes, we formed a partnership, said Ashley. We've considered your offer, and my partners and I believe that for $75, we can put on a magic show never to be forgotten. I believe, said Papa Pete, tugging on his mustache, that for $30, you can put on a magic show that I'll like even better. Take it, I whispered in Ashley's ear. It'll only go down from there. Deal, Ashley said, and she stuck out her hand. Papa Pete shook it and said, Of course, for this kind of money, I'd hope to see a small live furry thing coming out of a top hat. I'd always enjoy that. No problem, Ashley said. Frankie and I shot each other panicked looks. Why was she promising that? We didn't have a small live furry thing. We grabbed Ashley by the arm and pulled her over to the video game room. I knew I had to get her away from Papa Pete before she agreed to make the Empire State Building disappear. What were you thinking? I said to Ashley. I was thinking about a rabbit, she said. It's always nice to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Earth to Ashley, said Frankie. We don't have a rabbit. That's a good point, she said. Now what are we going to do? I asked. You promised Papa Pete we'd pull a live furry thing out of a hat. He's counting on it. Ashley just smiled. You'll think of something, Hank. You always do. Okay, we're also reading chapter 6. On the walk home, we couldn't stop coming up with names for our new magic business. When we left McKelty's, we thought the Magic Trio sounded really good, smooth and simple. By the time we crossed the street, we'd switched to something flashier, like the 3 Magic Tiers. When we saw a neon sign in front of the all-night laundromat, we came up with Magic, open all night. By 83rd Street, Frankie was convinced that we should be the Mystical Magical Dudes. By 82nd Street, Ashley was pushing for the Disappearing Act. By the time we reached 78th Street, we decided we were Magic 3. Frankie thought we should definitely spell magic with a K because it looks cool. That was fine with me since that's the way I thought it was spelled anyway. It felt so great to have a name and a plan. We figured we'd start our career at McKelty's Rollin' Bowl. Then we'd move on to kids' parties and get known all over the West Side. Next, we'd take our show downtown and finally on to Madison Square Garden, where there'd be thousands of fans chanting our name, Magic 3, Magic 3, Magic 3. We decided to start rehearsals right away, so we scheduled a kickoff meeting right after dinner. I was so excited about Magic 3 that I couldn't wait to go upstairs and tell my parents about us. I buzzed our apartment number. My sister Emily answered the intercom. "Who's there?" she asked. "Open sesame," I said in my best magician voice. "Hank, is that you? Why do you sound so weird?" "The mighty Zangawi requests that you let him in. I gave my voice this really cool echo. Frankie and Ashley cracked up. "Mom!" Emily yelled. "Hank's downstairs and he thinks he's being funny, but he's not." "Just buzz him in, honey," I heard my mom say over the sound of the blender in the kitchen. "I'm letting you in," Emily said, "but if it were up to me, I'd leave you standing down there until you act normal." That's a strange thing to say coming from Emily, who's about as unnormal as a person can be. Frankie, Ashley, and I got into the elevator and pressed our floors. I live on 10, which is the top floor. Frankie lives on 6 and Ashley lives on 4. As we rode up, I imagined the three of us dressed in black capes and top hats. We'd all have mustaches. Ashley would look so funny in a mustache. The elevator stopped at her floor. I pushed the door open and held it with my foot. We all put our hands out and placed them on top of one another's. "Magic 3 rules," we chanted. Ashley got out. Frankie and I headed for 6. "Watch this," said Frankie. He snapped his fingers and said, "Zangawi!" The elevator stopped and the door opened on his floor. I rode by myself up to 10. When I got out, I shoved my key into my apartment door lock and made my entrance into the apartment. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Zipser family," I said with a sweep of my imaginary cape. "Welcome to the most astounding show you will ever behold, featuring the amazing talents of Magic 3. I am one of them." I took a bow. No one said a word. My dog Cheerio ran up to me to say hello. At least someone in the family appreciated me. I took another bow. A really deep one. A really long one. "I'm going to my room until dinner," Emily said. "This is too strange for me." My father was sitting in his boxers at the dining room table working on a crossword puzzle. He was wearing a pair of glasses on the top of his head. He does that sometimes, even though I'm pretty sure he doesn't have eyes up there. He looked at me like I was a short stranger. "You're late," he said. "We were with Papa Pete at McKelty's." "You should have called." "But I was with Papa Pete, not some stranger," I told him. "You have to learn to be responsible, Hank," he answered back. Responsible? I'm a small business owner. How much more responsible can you get? But I didn't tell my dad that. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said. "I'll call next time." My mother came in from the kitchen. I could tell she'd been cooking because her hair was pulled back with a headband. Her hair is blonde and curly, and when she wears it loose, bits of food she's cooking sometimes land in it. She's had all kinds of things in her hair. Flour, chunks of chocolate chip cookie dough. Once she even found lima bean. The hairband is her new discovery, and it's been working really well for her. Mom started to push my father's papers to the end of the dining room table. We eat at one end of the table, and his office is at the other end. He does something with computers. I'm not sure what it is, but I know it's pretty boring. "How was your first day, my big 4th grader?" my mom asked, kissing me on the cheek. "Did you remember to bring home your assignment sheet?" "That would be a first," said Emily the Perfect. She came out of her bedroom carrying her iguana, Catherine, on her shoulder. Who names a lizard Catherine? Some people say that Emily and I look alike. Even though she's 15 months younger than me, we're almost the same size. We both have green eyes and dark hair that goes in a lot of different directions, like my dad's. But as far as I'm concerned, that's where the similarity ends. For one thing, I don't polish each fingernail a different color like Emily does. And for another, I don't have to use chapstick all the time because I lick my lips too much. And most important, I don't walk around with an iguana on my shoulder. My sister Emily calls herself a reptile person. I call her a creepy reptile person. I mean, you're trying to enjoy your dinner and all of a sudden her iguana snaps out its long tongue and snatches a carrot off your plate. How can a guy digest? My mom went back to the kitchen and brought out some soup for dinner. It was barley mushroom. I could tell it was Papa Pete's recipe because it smelled great. She dished everyone up a big bowl, took off her headband and apron, and sat down at the table. "Who wants to share their day?" Mom asked. She says this every night at dinner. The great thing is that she really wants to hear all about your day. I let Emily start. "Who do you think got appointed eraser monitor?" she said. "Me. And our teacher, Miss Springflower, says I have the neatest penmanship she's ever seen. And she was really impressed with my summer reading list. She said she's never met a not even third grader who could read a 329-page book. I think I'm her favorite, and it's only the first day." The only thought that came to my mind was, could you barf? The iguana's elastic tongue shot out for some soup. She missed, and her tongue made the soup splash high out of the bowl, hitting my father smack in the eye. "Emily, take that thing and put it back in your room," he said. Finally, he was reacting in a normal way. "This so-called thing is an iguana whose natural habitat is the Galapagos," Emily said. "So can we FedEx it back home?" I asked. My father chuckled. "Stanley," said Mom, "Catherine is a member of this family too." "And what am I?" said my dad. "A lowly fly on the wall?" I love it when adults say things like that. Things that sort of make sense, but don't really. "Let's not spoil a nice dinner," said my mom. She turned her attention to me. I was crumbling a cracker into my soup. I like to float the pieces, watch them get soggy, and eat them just before they sink. "Hank," said my mom, "it's your turn. Let's hear about your day." "My teacher, Ms. Adolph, is so strict," I began. "We have to write a huge essay about what we did on our summer vacation. 5 paragraphs. No sooner were the words out of my mouth than I knew I had made a big mistake. My father wanted to know when it was due. My mother wanted to know when I was planning to start. Knowing me, they both suggested I begin tonight. "I want to start on it because you know how much I believe in getting an early start on things," I said with my fingers crossed. "But tonight I have a very important meeting at the clubhouse at 7. "Honey, you know how long it takes you to do your homework," said my mother. "This is the first assignment of the year," added my father. "You have to make a good impression on your teacher." "But my business partners are counting on me," I pleaded. "What business partners?" my father asked, getting irritated. "Now, Henry," my mother said. Uh-oh, the H word. Whenever she calls me Henry, I know it's all over. "We talked about starting this school year off on the right foot. I know you want to do that, don't you?" "But I have 6 whole days to write it," I said. "That's less than a paragraph a day. And this meeting could change my entire life and yours." "That's enough," my father said. "Right after dessert, you're going to march into your room, sit down at your desk, and start writing. I want 1 paragraph completed tonight." Just then, Catherine flipped out her disgusting tongue and snapped up the last piece of cracker that I'd been saving. This night was going nowhere fast. All right, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.